On a dune in Cape Cod plays a 12-year-old girl and her dog. They follow a scent and find a disturbing scene of a woman lying on her beach towel. Who was this woman? Why was she murdered so violently? This is the story of the Lady of the Dune, Massachusetts' longest cold case, which, thanks to federal and state law enforcement persistence and technological breakthroughs, has recently been closed. Welcome to Crime Console. Every crime has a story, every story has a puzzle, and here we break them down piece by piece. Before we begin, today's background game is Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is a role-playing game where you inherit a farm from your dear old grandpa. You can customize your farm throughout the 4 seasons. You can work on growing crops, raising animals, fishing, cooking, delving into mines, fighting monsters, foraging, all while creating deep friendships with the locals, some you can even marry. It even has an evil mega corporation that you can choose to befriend for capitalistic gains or destroy it and harness the power of the Junimo fairy magic. This game is everything you can ask for. Best part is you play your way. While there is a general storyline and you can level up abilities, each day you choose how you want to play. Play by yourself or up to other people. This game is truly for everyone. The question is, what will your farm adventure be? Now back to today's case. As with every case, it is based on real events and people. I strive to include factual details of their lives. All details have been presented to reflect the current public knowledge, and sources are listed in the description below. Every person and their family deserves to be remembered with empathy and compassion. All people are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law. Please be advised that this episode does include some potentially triggering topics such as violence, graphic murder, dismemberment, nudity, potential sexual violence, long unsolved cold cases, fraud, multiple homicides, potential kidnapping, and potential serial killing. Viewer discretion is heavily advised. As always, if any of this is something you can't listen to right now, please click out and just join us in the future with a different case. Hopefully, we'll see you again soon. Our hearts reach out to those affected by this case. It's July in Cape Cod. The weather is pleasant as the cool Atlantic breeze helps keep the air fresh and cool under the warm sun. Beaches here are full of locals and tourists. Everyone is enjoying the coastal life of fishing, shopping at boutiques, antique stores, enjoying the art and music, and finally eating some delicious fresh seafood. It is July 26, 1974. This idyllic experience is ruined for 12-year-old Leslie Metcalf and her dog. On the dunes, 1 mile west of Race Point Road in Provincetown, only a mile east of the local ranger station, is an unusual smell that they follow. Once she realized that the smell was coming from not a deer, but a body of a woman, she ran and got help. The unknown woman was roughly 145 pounds, 5'8", and she was probably between her 20s to 40s. Her naked body is found posed. Her head is resting on her Wrangler jeans with a blue bandana. She's lying halfway on a light green cotton beach towel as if sharing with another person. She had long reddish-brown hair with a gold-flecked hair tie and pink nail polish on her toes. Sadly, this is where the scene becomes disturbing. Both of her hands and one forearm were missing. Several teeth were pulled, and her head was nearly completely severed from her body. According to the FBI, it's presumed this was done by her killer to attempt hiding her identity by removing fingerprints and dental work. Despite the missing teeth, it was noted in her file that she had expensive dental work that was described as New York style at the time. Later, it would be determined that she died from a blow to the head, as the left side of her skull was crushed in, most likely done with a military-style entrenching tool. Unfortunately for investigators, it was not left at the scene. It was estimated that the attack had occurred 2 to 3 weeks prior to her body's discovery due to the insect activity and significant decay. The display and state of her body suggested that she had either known her killer or been asleep during the attack due to the lack of defensive wounds. Finally, her nakedness, possible strangulation, and signs on her body suggested that there was a sexual attack though it was never confirmed. As time passed with no leads on her identity, she was buried in St. Peter Cemetery in Provincetown. Her headstone read, "Unidentified female doe, found Race Point Dunes, July 26, 1976. She was exhumed in 1980 for blood samples and again in 2000 to confirm her identity. Despite several leads and scientific advancements, it would still be almost 5 decades later until she was finally identified." As the years passed, several theories were presented as to who the Lady of the Dunes could be. Several missing person cases of women in the area, as well as a lead on a missing criminal, Rory Jean Kessinger, who had broken out of jail in 1973, were presented, though all were eventually ruled out. In 1981, investigators had a hopeful lead that a woman who had resembled the victim was seen with the mobster Whitey Bulger. He was known for removing victims' teeth. Perhaps this could be the Lady of the Dunes. However, it was dismissed as well. Tony Costa, a serial killer in a nearby town, was also suspected, but later eliminated as he had died almost 2 months prior to when the victim was found. Finally, a convicted murderer and suspected serial killer, Hayden Clark, confessed to the murder but claimed that due to police brutality, he would never tell them the victim's name. Due to his mental illness of paranoid schizophrenia, his confession was doubted. He had made a drawing and a map to where other bodies could potentially be found, and he had also made other claims of murdering other victims. Some were proven that he was the perpetrator, and others were proven that he could not have been. In 2006, a claim model, as well as age regression drawings, were created and distributed in hopes of identification. In 2010, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created a 3D composite image. Sadly, none of this yielded any answers. This led many to theorize that she was potentially a foreign citizen or had no family. In 2015, the case once again gathered national interest. The theory was submitted by the son of Stephen King. Joe Hill hypothesized that one of the women in the scene from Jaws was dressed almost identically to the Lady of the Dunes. The filming took place near her death, and many locals and tourists worked as extras. So it definitely was a possibility. By this time, the film's casting director had passed away, and there were no surviving records of the Jaws extras. Later, he posted a picture on Twitter of both women's images, and he admitted that maybe the likeness wasn't as identical as he once believed. Finally, a major breakthrough in the case occurred. Boston FBI and Massachusetts state's officials identified 2 other unidentified victims in other cases using a new form of DNA analysis called investigative genealogy. Investigative genealogy is the combination of DNA analysis with genealogy research and historical records used in combination to generate new leads. Using parts of her skulls and a portion of her jaw for this testing and searching in local databases such as Ancestry.com, it finally happened. On October 31st, 2022, over 48 years after her body had been discovered, the FBI field office in Boston announced that the Lady of the Dunes was Ruth Marie Terry. The FBI and Massachusetts State's Police issued a request for information on the homicide victim and her husband, Guy Rockwell Muldavin. They were believed to have been in the New England area in 1973 and 74. But who was Ruth Marie Terry, and why was she killed? Ruth Marie Terry was born on September 9th, 1936 in Whitwell, Tennessee. Whitwell is a mining town with richness in natural coal ore located in the nearby mountains. She was born to coal miner Johnny Terry and his wife Ava, who would later die at the age of 23. She was described as a free spirit who just wanted more than country life by her family and close friends. She also went by Terry Mary and Terry Shannon. Please note, in a lot of articles and information, especially the ones supplied below, she was identified as both Ruth and Terry equally. For the purposes of this video, we will stick with Ruth. When she was 20, she left Whitwell in a short-lived marriage and arrived in Michigan by 1957. She took a job at car manufacturing at the Fisher Body in Livonia. She was unwed and was pregnant. During that time, she met Patricia, Thelma, and Richard Hanchett Sr., all who worked with the plant. Richard was actually the superintendent, and Ruth and the family seemed to be friendly. The family were in their late 40s and wanted to adopt, and she was an unwed pregnant woman, which was heavily frowned upon during this time, so the group made a deal. The Hanchetts paid all of her expenses for the remainder of her pregnancy, and at the end, she agreed to hand her baby over to them to adopt on birth. This included a rental house that was across the street from the plant for the last 2.5 months of her pregnancy. When it came time to deliver the baby, Thelma gave her ID instead of Ruth, whom she looked very similar to. All three went to the hospital where she delivered a baby boy who was then named Richard Hanchett. Soon after, she left for California. In later years, she would reach out to her biological son, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, he could not meet her at that time and sadly would never get a chance. Time continued to pass, and late 1973, Ruth visited her family, this time with a new husband in hand, Guy Rockwell Muldavin, though there is some confusion if she married him at that time or was later officially married in February of 1974. According to the family, the couple was going to travel through the country, specifically Massachusetts, looking for antiques, as Guy was an art or antiques dealer in Reno, Nevada. Brittany, her grandniece, said Ruth really wasn't herself when the guy was near and felt he was incredibly possessive. Later, the couple met up with Ruth's half-brother Kenneth and his wife Carol, who also reported having a bad and uneasy feeling about her new husband. At the time, Ruth was 37 and Guy was 51, which was a significant age difference. In the late summer of 1974, Guy returned to Tennessee for a short visit in what was believed to be her car without Ruth. He told the family that they had a fight on their honeymoon and he didn't know where she was, and then left. He also told other people during that time that she was dead. Her brother tried to ask him more questions but got nowhere. Later, he even hired a private investigator to look at him and look for her, but with no luck. The investigator later concluded that all of her things were sold, she left on her free will, and was probably either in a religious cult or in the witness protection program. Either way, she couldn't contact her family, but was presumed alive, just missing. Her family would list her as deceased in family obituaries 30 years after her disappearance, but they had hope still that she might be somewhere. So who was her husband, Guy, and why did he not care that she had disappeared? Guy Muldavin, also known as Raoul Guy Rockwell and Guy Muldavin Rockwell, was born on October 27, 1923. There is little officially known about his early life. Kathy Curran, a former NBC 10 Boston reporter, stated in a 3-part docuseries that Guy was adopted and his father had issues with alcohol and mental illness. We do know that later he moved with his mom to New Mexico, though it was stated he was potentially schooled in several areas, as well as potentially tutored at his family's cattle ranch in New Mexico. As a young adult, he moved to New York to work as a professor at the Academy of Dramatic Arts. There he met, and it was said he fell in love with his first wife, Jolene May Loop, who was a beauty pageant contestant and model. When the couple married, they moved to California, where she left her career. He sang at the KIEM radio station. Later, they moved to Seattle to a furniture department store where the couple owned a large antique shop. While it's not disclosed why the marriage ended, it did end in divorce 10 years later in 1956. In 1958, he married Manzanita Aileen Ryan, who went by Manzi. She and her 18-year-old daughter, Dolores, vanished on April Fool's Day of 1960. In July, Guy would file for divorce, claiming desertion, and then immediately married Evelyn Emerson. Only 5 days after marrying Evelyn, her stepmother gave him a cashier's check of $10,000 to buy antiques and make a quick resale in Canada. During that time, the police were still investigating Manzi and Dolores' disappearance. Later, as they began questioning him, they found in the home that he had shared with Manzi bits of human tissue and pieces of human body that were located in a newly sealed septic tank. As questions came more and more about the disappearance, Guy and the money vanished. He was also wanted for questioning during this time for another murder in Humboldt County. This murder occurred in 1950. It was the case of a bread truck driver who was slain and a local waitress that went missing, presumed kidnapped. In 1947 to 48, Guy lived in the area. The driver, Henry Baird, was found shot at the back of the head in 1950. He had last been seen that Saturday with his girlfriend Barbara, the missing waitress, who was sadly never found. What was very interesting is that it was noted that the body was on a beach, was naked, with his and her clothing folded neatly nearby. Another connection to Guy during this time is that the parents of Guy's first wife, whom he lived with, owned the restaurant in town. Baird's route visited both Guy's and his girlfriend's restaurant on the same trip. Guy, during that time, was a short order cook in his father-in-law's restaurant. Unfortunately, due to the lack of evidence, Guy would never be arrested for the missing women or the truck driver case. The Seattle prosecutors filed for fleeing, but later dropped the case, and that was the end of those cases. However, the larceny charges were still an option, but by that time, Guy had completely fled. He was later found across the country, picked up an apartment in Greenwich Village, New York. The newspapers reported him as a womanizer, that he currently had 3 wives and as many sweethearts. He was known for his nightly soirees with celebrities and art lovers, and everyone was enamored by his magnetism and offbeat philosophy. According to SF Gate, he was described by the media at the time as a somewhat actor, a DJ in California, an antiques dealer in Seattle, and a bunco artist and great lover everywhere he went. Guy was convicted in 1961 on larceny charges and sentenced to no more than 15 years, according to the Erie News Time. But in March 1962, the judge suspended his sentence, provided that he would repay the rest of the money. Muldavin walked free, according to the Associated Press. And confusingly, in 1973, he remarried Evelyn, but not much is known after that. What we do know is that by 1970, he moved back to Reno, where he later then met and married Ruth. It was there he gained a near cult-like following on the popular radio program Take to Me on KAZU Pacific Grove. Only 2 years after Ruth's disappearance, Guy published a book called Cooking with Rump Oil. Retired FBI profiler Julia Cowley actually analyzed this bizarre and twisted book and noted some very interesting things in the book and how it might relate to Guy's philosophy, mental state, and the disappearance of his wife. One of the recipes was titled Cape Cod Shid, and in it has a drawing of a creature with long hair where he writes, "After the shid is caught, anything over 5 minutes ends it. The sweet turpentine taste will turn to that of a burnt glove, and the tender look will become one of despair." Cowley thought this was an interesting connection because many killers, it is the moment that the light leaves a person's eyes that is the most powerful, and seems to be what he is describing here. This, with a combination of the book's focus on dismembering beasts' parts to consume, and her dismemberment, displays some strong connections to her murder and this fascination. Finally, in the introduction, Guy wrote about deciding what beasts or monsters to sacrifice. Cowley said this had a strong connection with the belief that when someone no longer suits his purpose in life, he's going to figure out how to change that. It might include, "I'm done with you, I'm going to kill you." Perhaps he was done with Ruth. The book itself showed he wanted attention, but didn't want to be caught. He knew she was dead, but he also most likely enjoyed that for almost 5 decades, no one knew his little secret. He would go on to have at least 2 more long-term relationships with other women, and later died at the age of 78 in Salinas, California, on March 14, 2002, after a lengthy illness. Unfortunately, despite all of these parallels and coincidences of other cases, Guy never answered for his possible role in the disappearances of the women or the potential murders. We're left wondering what truly happened. During that time, Ruth's family had not forgotten her. In 2010, Ruth's niece began a genealogical search on Ancestry.com, and in 2017 learned she was related to Ruth's son and invited him to the next year's family reunion. The niece sadly died in 2021, never knowing about Ruth, but it's this genealogical search that became the point of interest for investigators and later solved the Lady of the Dunes case that the body was identified as Ruth. After learning what happened to their missing family members, the family mourned. Kenneth, Ruth's half-brother, said, "It tore me up to find out what happened and know how she died." Another family member said, "The way things ended like they did, we'll never be able to accept that. We just hope and pray that the death was like they told us. It was quick, before all the torture and everything. We just pray for that." Later, her son collected Ruth's remains and put her in her final resting places. Some of Ruth's remains stayed in Provincetown, while some were buried with her mother in Tennessee. Some were scattered on the beach she was found, and finally some went back with her son to his home. Guy was officially named the killer on August 28, 2023. Investigators then officially closed Ruth's case, marking the end of the oldest unidentified homicide victim in Massachusetts history. Even though there was no conviction, Ruth and her family can hopefully rest in peace, knowing she has finally came home, and her story has been told. This case, and many like hers, show that with police determination and scientific advancements, the victims can still tell their stories even decades later. And that concludes the Lady of the Dunes case. Thank you for tuning in. If you're interested in true crime, please subscribe, leave a thumbs up, or comment below with your thoughts on the case or the new cases to cover. Do you think Guy did it? Do you think he was potentially a serial killer? Please be respectful, as you never know if the victim's family is viewing this as well. Make sure you put on your bell notifications so you'll never miss when we upload a new episode. New episodes drop on the first and third Friday of the month. Thank you for watching, and as always, please be aware and stay safe. We'll see you next time.